He said, I'll always make you think you have a say, but you never will. Those words left me breathless. They woke me up to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better and that I at least owed it to myself to find out. Surviving him was like a near death experience that inspired me to go back at life with gusto. I continued to struggle in relationship for many more years, attracting not so nice guys and even not so nice friends. In hindsight, I can now see why I needed to do better for myself in relationships. The kind that I call big wild love. And what was the payoff? And how could I make better choices for myself? Do you have big wild love? And as importantly, do you want it? The answer has got to be yes. There's a lot of talk these days about self-love and how you can't have a healthy relationship with another person until you love yourself first. And that's true. But what if you do love yourself? You really love yourself and it's just still not working. You eat right and you exercise and you spend time with friends, you meditate, you make it a point to paint or kickbox or go kayaking or journal or whatever it is that you love to do most every week. You put your feet in the dirt. You spend most days running in circles to love yourself, 6 ways to Sunday, and still you're more likely to find Bigfoot than a healthy, happy, sustainable relationship in love or friendship or anywhere else. You might be wondering what's wrong with you. The answer is there's nothing wrong with you. You're just one of the many people who are doing self-love wrong, confusing it with self-care. And I know this because I used to be one of them. So when I was 19, I had my first real relationship with a guy named Sam. Now, I met Sam during the summer after my first year of college, and he was awesome. He really liked me, which surprised me because I wasn't skinny. And I'd been taught by my very loving mother early on that boys just don't like fat girls. And this instilled the belief in me that I needed to be thin to be loved. And since I wasn't, I considered myself lucky that someone as cool as Sam would be interested in me. And in the beginning, things were great. Sam and I had a lot of fun together, so much so that I decided not to go back to school, which was 4 hours away, and transfer to a local college so I could still be close to him. But I never did that. College never, ever happened. Instead, I took a part-time job stocking clothes at a women's boutique so I could tend to Sam's every whim. And trust me, he took full advantage. Not only did he take up so much time that I had none left for school, but he had very little interest in what I wanted. He also started to forbid me to see my friends and my family and to even pursue any goals of my own. I went along because I wasn't skinny. And then we got engaged. And a month before our wedding, we had a huge fight over an apartment that I wanted to move into, and he just didn't. And that's when he said something that changed everything. He said, I'll always make you think you have a say, but you never will. I'll make all the decisions. Those words left me breathless. They woke me up to the idea that maybe, just maybe, I deserved better and that I at least owed it to myself to find out. Somehow I found the courage to let Sam go. Surviving him was like a near-death experience that inspired me to go back at life with gusto. I finished 3 years of college in 1 year. I got a master's degree and I moved to a new city for new adventures where I thrived professionally as a journalist. And personally, I took time for myself in ways that Sam would have never, ever allowed. I figured the better that I felt about myself, the better chance I'd have at finding someone new to love, and I was ready. But it didn't work. I continued to struggle in relationship for many more years, attracting not so nice guys and even not so nice friends. In hindsight, I can now see why. Because I hadn't done anything to revise subconscious belief that drew me to the wrong people. While all that self-care made me feel calmer and more peaceful, it just didn't go far enough in offering me the deeper self-love that I needed to do better for myself in relationships. the kind that I call big wild love. So big wild love is a more intentional form of self-love that has you see yourself for potentially the very first time. I stumbled upon it after finding my way to a relationship with someone who was good, but who still couldn't give me what I wanted, which by that time was marriage. And that's when I started to ask different questions. Like, why did I keep bringing people into my life who couldn't give me what I wanted? And what was the payoff? And how could I make better choices for myself going forward? Doing this inner work, it inspired me to let go of those limiting beliefs that were given to me by other people that I had no idea I even had, and create new, more empowering beliefs that set me up for success instead of failure, that told me I was perfectly lovable just as I was. And you know what happened? I went on to find finally a healthy relationship with a wonderful man who not only wanted all the things that I did from a relationship, but from life too. And we've been happily married now for 14 years. And here's what else happened. I used my big wild love to let go of anything that didn't serve me, from relationships and friendships to jobs and beliefs and mindsets and even negative emotions. And I even wrote a book that gives people the tools they need to cultivate their own big wild love and use it to let go for whatever it is they want most. Which brings me to you. Do you have big wild love? And as importantly, do you want it? The answer has got to be yes. Because big wild love doesn't just give you the self-awareness and the courage and the confidence that you need to be bold on your own behalf, but it also empowers you to take the risks that are inherent in letting go whenever you find yourself stuck. Big wild love reminds you that you have choices. It keeps you from lingering in the wrong situations or giving yourself over to people who just don't deserve you. It keeps you from wasting time and energy on the wrong stuff. It puts the ground under your feet, so when you find yourself at the precipice of a hard decision, you won't be afraid to jump, even if you don't see a net, because big wild love tells you that you are the net. Sounds pretty good, right? And as someone who is proudly big wild loving, I can tell you that it most definitely is. Now, with that said, if you don't think you're big wild loving or you want more of it, here are 5 things you can do every single day to get it for yourself. Listen to your inner wisdom. Okay, so think about a time when you were with someone who just wasn't giving you what you wanted or treating you the way that you wanted. Maybe that was 3 years ago or last year or even right now. How did it make you feel? Tired, achy, stressed? Did you have a pit in your stomach that just never went away, or feel sad or lonely for no reason, or even panicked? I felt all of those things a lot with Sam. And yet I had no idea that it was my inner subconscious wisdom, that little voice in my head and my gut that we so often dismiss or don't listen to, screaming for my attention, telling me it was time to move on. You see, our bodies are hardwired for our survival. Whether we're fighting off a tiger in the woods or we're trying to survive inside of a situation that's got us feeling empty. Big, wild, loving people listen to that inner wisdom. They try to figure out where it's coming from, and then they do whatever they need to do to put whatever that wisdom is trying to say into action. 2, embrace short-term pain for long-term gain. Listen, often that inner wisdom is telling you to do something hard, something you don't really want to do or wish with everything you've got was different. Because if what you needed to do was easy, you wouldn't need to bury it. For example, if you didn't really like that person you were with, it would be pretty easy to let them go. But cutting your losses and moving on becomes infinitely more difficult with someone you love and care about, but no, just isn't right for you. And yet when you're big, wild, loving, you know that you must, even if it hurts, that your decisions come with opportunity costs and that your pain exists for a purpose. 3, define your worth. When you're big, wild, loving, you know that only you get to decide what you're worth. and you know that value is high. You don't measure your worth by other people's yardsticks or those pretty staged pictures on social media. You know that nobody ever gets ahead looking sideways. When you meet someone new, you don't wonder whether they'll like you. You wonder if you'll like them. You resist the temptation to make decisions based on what other people want for you or think you should have. And while you might reach out to someone that you admire for advice, which, by the way, is an incredibly big, wild, loving thing to do, ultimately you trust your own instincts and you do what's best for you in the end because you know and love yourself the most. 4, don't personalize the limitations of other people. So if you're big, wild, loving, you know that when someone does something to hurt you, it's usually about them. The person who won't give you what you want because they're just not sure you're the one. Or the pal who tells you she's just too sick to go out for dinner. And then someone else sees her at your favorite restaurant with someone else. The colleague who takes credit for your work. We are mirrors for other people, and we're always reflecting back to them how they see themselves. And if they're not big, wild, loving, they may perceive your wins as their losses and project that back in a negative way. And while that may affect you, it's not about you. Many years ago, I won an award for an article that I wrote. And when I told my friends, they shrugged it off. And man, did that hurt. Back then, I was woefully low on big, wild love. And I took a lot of things personally. And that's when a mentor told me this. He said, when people see a stallion and they can't be like it, they try to break its legs. Which brings me to my last point, 5. Know that no matter what happens, you will be okay because you have you and you are awesome. And when you come to believe this, you will never find yourself stuck in a relationship or anywhere else again. It's funny, when I look back at the pictures of me and Sam, I don't see a not skinny girl. I see a beautiful young woman who had no idea just how powerful she was, with beautiful curves and bright blue eyes and all kinds of promise. If only I'd seen her that way back then. Which begs the question, how do you see yourself? As you move through the business of everyday life, I promise you, it'll be easy to get lost in the wrong places. To believe that self-care is self-love and that that's enough. And to wonder why it's just not getting you where you want to go. But if you keep these 5 principles close, you will never lose your way again. They'll always remind you that big, wild love is your North Star, that you are a stallion. All you have to do is believe it.
Tell us what you think about this video, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.